Hello to niggas and niggas only. This is your boy Keese, Marquise Davon, this American Negro. Call me anything, but do not call me Mark, please and thank you. If you are new here, welcome to my show. This American Negro is a podcast that aims to bridge academia and the hood. And then, if you are back, welcome back. Y'all already know what it is. I appreciate you always, always, always for showing up and showing out. So if you want to support This American Negro, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can do so monetarily. So if you go to patreon.com/Marquise Davon, that's MarquiseDavon, you can become a patron for as little as $2 a month, which is $24 a year. But if you're feeling a little extra generous, you can throw a little something in there too, a little extra. And that just helps support this here podcast. That gives me opportunities to invest more, get a team, get an editor. So this way I can pump out a lot more content and actually have a little bit more bandwidth to like really go the way that I want to go. But I understand that money is also a commitment. So if you do not have the funds to be able to do so, you can also support me in non-monetary ways as well. So you can do so by sharing this podcast, telling a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend about this podcast, engaging with me on social media. So utilizing the hashtag This American Negro on Twitter or Instagram. And whenever you see a clip that is out as well, you can also just share that, tag somebody, tell somebody, hey, what do you think about this? And have a conversation over it. These are different ways to really support this here podcast. You can also do so by subscribing and leaving a rating and review on the show. Please, if you're on Apple Podcasts, you're able to leave 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever you feel around the episode. Just give me a review. If you are on Spotify as well, you can do the same thing. You can also engage with Q&A questions as well. And so this is going to give me a really good opportunity to, one, stay engaged with y'all, but also have another opportunity to really like get some real-time feedback too. If you're watching this on YouTube, then feel free to also leave comments, subscribe to this channel as well. That's going to just be able to boost me and also just share the message of the podcast too. Cool. I think that's all the administrative stuff to get up out of the way. Okay. Other than that, I'm super excited to get into this episode. This one is near and dear to my heart. I know I said that last time, but this one is fully in line with my passion, fully in line with who I am. But it's been a journey for me to get here. And so in this episode, we're going to talk around a case for prison abolition and how it can actually help the Black community. Why prison abolition? So I'll start, you already know, story time with a Negro. I'll talk to you about my process around getting to prison abolition as a politic, but also why I believe in the movement and why I hope that others are able to like believe in this movement as well. And so for me, growing up, I did not know my father for the first 24 years of my life. There were the occasional letters here and there, but I never met him. And for me, that had always been it's always been a point in my life where I've interacted with the prison system through and through, whether it was a step parent or even like just understanding what my father's been through, but also recognizing that like it is not easy being in that system. And there never felt as if people were truly being deterred away from prison. And I just remember like when we would visit some other people in prison, it was just like, what is going on to be able to help you, right? How are they setting you up so you don't go back into the system? Why do people keep going back in? Why is not reentry, but recidivism a real thing, right? It just never made sense to me as a kid, but I always felt sad entering a prison and visiting my stepdad and all of this other stuff because I was just like, this is miserable. People don't have real contact with the humans outside. Their lives are dictated by schedules the entire time. And as a kid, I was just like, I hope this place is making them get better. But when I realized like, ain't shit changing, it threw me. It didn't make sense to me. And I'm just like, there is something severely wrong here. But in those moments, I was like, maybe this is the best course of action. Maybe this is the only way that people understand how to keep community safe. It's a public safety issue. We're indoctrinated all the time. Like, yo, if you're in prison, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. Now that got complicated as I got a little bit older. I was starting to understand race a little bit more. I understand the history. All of that was important for me to be able to like develop this. But I remember like that tug and war within me as like, yo, public safety can only look one way. Public safety means only cops. Public safety means this. But I know my very real lived experience, it was so contradictory to that, right? Cops actually were doing more harm than they were doing good. They didn't prevent crime from happening. Not crime was still happening. They simply were responding to the calls, right? And so for me, I was just like, that shit don't make no sense. How can you honestly do your job effectively? How can you protect if there's no way to prevent? You're consistently reacting. So to me, I had always grown up and I had just questioned systems regularly. And it makes sense. I've questioned systems all over the place, whether that was church, whether that was school. I was just like, some of this stuff does not make sense, right? And so I remember um, getting into college and just learning around more of these systems and understanding the history and reading Angela Davis's Are Prisons Obsolete? And as I read that, Angela was just speaking facts, yo. Like, I was like, wait, so this is just slavery, just reincarnated or evolved as mass incarceration. People still don't have rights and I remember finding out like when people would still count imprisoned folks in the census, but they would not give them an opportunity. They would not give them the opportunity to vote. I was like, oh, they are just looked at as bodies. Like you can use them for political gain, but you're not giving them space to exercise their political nature. You're not giving them exercise to go through the process because they have been stripped of their rights. They're simply a body existing. And that to me was so saddening. And so as I had to like peel back and start understanding like, yo, these people are not bad. They were just bad circumstance. Now there are some bad people. You just be like, whoa, how did you get here? Who are you? Like, what is going on? Right. But overall, like when I listen to people and I met people and I've seen people who went through the prison system, friends who went through this prison system, it was such a dehumanizing experience. Like you are fully broken down to like the smallest being and you are forced to have to build yourself back up. And that to me is something so scary um, and frightening, but also all the people that I've met, they talk around their experience and was just like losing all of your rights. It teaches you to become a lot more one with yourself. And so my father had spent a third of his sentence in the hole. He was in isolation. So 23 in and 1 out. And I think about that a lot of the time. And I'm just like, yo, you had to be with yourself for so many formative years of your life, right? And it's something that I can't imagine, but I hear his stories and it just ignites my passion for this a lot more, especially because we don't give the benefit of the doubt to those who are incarcerated, and we don't want to. We can just ignore them and just be like, all right, good riddance, and keep it going. And our community is not fully like that, right? Like we still have people putting money on the books. We're still visiting. We're still doing this, but it is a large impact on family and how our community can be destabilized. And as I'm learning my own journey with it, I was just like, all right, I think America got it messed up. And I just wanted to figure out like what could we do differently. And so when I was introduced to prison abolition, I delved fully deep into it because I was just like, yo, there's potential for us to imagine a different future. And I think that's a big piece of prison abolition is that ability to imagine what our future could be and how that can positively impact Black people specifically. And so before that's enough of the story, right? Because now we're going to fully get into it. And before anything, you already know I love a good definition. So this way, all of us can understand, have a basic understanding of what I'm talking about, but we can communicate with each other effectively, right? And so I'm going to read this definition for y'all, and then I'm going to get into the why it's important, what the problem is, how does this look, and what we can do to start building out the politic as you start to like build tension with it, like same way that we all do, right? And so when we look at it, the prison abolition movement is a loose collection of people and groups who, in many different ways, are calling for deep structural reforms to how we handle and even think around crime in our country. The movement thus operates with affinity groups with various organizations working in prisoner support, prisoner advocacy, political advocacy, or community education. Abolitionists therefore share in the idea of vision, More than a structure, a future in which vital needs like housing, education, healthcare are met, allowing people to live safe and fulfilled lives without the needs for prisons. So, when I sit with that definition a lot, the things that are important that really stick out are it's a deep structural change. The other piece is there are a couple different spaces on how you can show up, whether that's supporting prisoners directly, whether that's advocating, whether you're in a political realm, or if you're in the community education realm of like, yo, this is how you can start building your politic. This is what this actually looks like. Here's how you can advocate for yourself. Here's how you can prevent yourself from getting to the prison system or having to interact it and be impacted by it in some way, shape, or form. And then the other piece is where they talk around meeting the basic needs. Prison abolition requires a transformative justice framework and approach to any time that we are talking around significant change. Transformative justice is a framework that requires us to ask why over and over and over again. And not only just why, but how might we change this outcome? How might we change this situation? How might we be able to ensure that this doesn't happen to our people in the future? It all requires an iterative process, right? I can use words, I swear. And this is something that I've learned even in my own professional space. It's a design thinking process, right? We don't know what this will always look like. No, we can imagine what it will look like. It's hard for a lot of people to imagine this in practice because what happens when the violent offenders come about and then it's potential for assault to happen or murder or any of those like very egregious crimes, but also understanding that like that's less and less, right? That are in terms of what things are happening. They're normally repeat offenders handling these situations. And so there can be special cases that we have to figure out like what is going on or how do we like ensure the full safety of our communities, right? And so that piece is very real because these are emotional things that we have and these are also real life things. So I don't want to say like we have all the end all be all answers, but we do recognize that when all basic needs are met, people can make more informed decisions and people are able to make decisions that don't require them to trade one thing off. They're able to not have to make a decision on an empty stomach. They're not making a decision on like, will this get me kicked out of my house? Will this make me lose my job? Will this mean that a stream of income is no longer going to be there, that I can't support my family or support myself, right? Like that idea of having all your basic needs met is really what's going to help in the future because if I have a livable wage, if I have adequate health care, if I'm making enough money, if I have secure housing, then this means that my kids don't have to go to school hungry. They don't have to be triggered by every little thing possible. There won't be these moments of just like, I don't understand why you're acting this way, because at the end of the day, it's a holistic system, right? I always say if we're looking at why this kid's heads down in class, it's not always, right? It's not always due to the system. However, it plays a large part. The kid's heads down in class because he maybe not have eaten enough of a meal at home. And if he didn't eat that enough of a meal at home, it's probably because this parent didn't have access to money or didn't have the time to be able to like feed. And then this way we start to see just like as you peel back, what is the underlying issue and how do we get to the root? So transformative justice and prison abolition requires us to get to the root of a lot of these issues because oftentimes we critique the symptoms of the issue rather than attacking the root of the issue to ensure that these symptoms don't happen anymore. And that's the piece that we always miss out because attacking the root means that we have to put in a lot more work. But if we see like the weeds are growing, those are symptoms of bad roots. That's symptoms of bad dirt, bad soil, right? Whatever the analogy is. But you understand what I'm trying to say. You feel me? Okay. I don't do that nature stuff sometimes. But that's besides the point. And so when I look at prison abolition, this actually solves a little bit of our issues as well. We're looking at the fact that 80% of people who are currently incarcerated are in there for nonviolent offenses or low-level crimes that could probably just be like, yo, I was probably hungry at this point in time. Oh, it was just wrong place, wrong time. Oh, I'm actually not the person you're looking for, right? Like all of that stuff is very real. And so when we look at that, it's also recognizing like I said earlier, even when my question was just like, yo, police are reactionary. Police and prisons are not a deterrent. I think police and prisons are deterrent from like people who have more options, people who have more choices to make, that's going to be a deterrent, because you're like, wait, no, if I do this, I'm going to lose my house. If I do this, I'm going to lose this job, and this job that sustains me because I have something to lose. But people who are having to negotiate, having to do something that's unethical or unlawful, there's probably a reason that this happened, right? And that is like you were forced into making a decision. We have all made decisions that had different outcomes and negative impacts, and we can all relate to that piece, right? Hey, I only had these couple of options and I was on this time constraint, and this is what I was feeling at the time, and so this is the decision that I made. We have all made bad decisions. We have all made mistakes. But some people's mistakes are a lot more detrimental to their well-being than other people's mistakes, and I want that to be very clear. Those who are grossly impacted by the criminal justice system, and more particularly the prison industrial complex, are low-income Black and brown people. Black men are making the majority of these prisons, right? So we're obviously the ones who are being targeted the highest rates, and we have a very unique relationship to it, because at the end of the day, I wasn't given adequate resources. I didn't have access to mental health facilities. I didn't have access to job opportunities, and then I also have to contend against race. Right? I have to contend against that. And so these are very real systems that can all play a part. And there is like this systemic approach that you're just like, this shit is whack. How do I ensure that this thing does not happen to me again or the person next to me? And so that takes me back to prison abolition. And so when people are just like, well, how are we supposed to make sure that everybody's safe in our community, this, that, and the third? Once again, you provide resources, but prison abolition also means there's an opportunity for community to continue to be built. People are trying to fight for scraps. People are trying to just live on the everyday. But if you think around it, if the majority of Black men are being targeted by mass incarceration and prison and policing, what happens when we begin to not have to be impacted by that particular system, right? When we know that, I have all the resources I need. You have more potential in two-parent households. You have people who are a lot more holistically healthy, whether mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. You have a community that is able to find more mentorship. You have young boys who can have the guidance that they may need if they are seeking it from older Black men, right? The opportunity to grow old, the opportunity to build a legacy, the opportunity to have livable jobs and an extra income that allows people to be mobile, right? All this is important because at the end of the day, once you leave prison, you still have to figure out, do I have the scarlet letter on me? I can't work with kids in a way that I may have wanted to. I can't actually interact with everybody the way I wanted to. Jobs may not want to hire me because they no longer see the potential in me, especially as a Black person. So when you look at all these structural things that can go into place, you also recognize that we are investing time into prisons when we should be investing time into preventative measures. Prison abolition is a preventative measure at its core. However, another issue is that we have a lot of bad faith actors who truly do not believe in prison abolition. They do not believe in the opportunity for Black and brown people to be able to have a redemption story or be able to understand the social ills of the community, of the society, because at the end of the day, I'm still benefiting off of you being in this jail cell, right? That is wild. And then while you're in there benefiting, you are making 1/10 of a cent. Your job, I can give you as much as you want, but I don't have to give you the education in prison. I don't have to give you a livable wage in prison. I don't have to give you jobs. I don't have to give you access to people. I can tear all of that away. That's what prisons continue to do. And so when you look at prison abolition and you want to think around the tenets of what this looks like from your day to day to day, it can be as simple as building out your community. And so this could look like getting invested in after school programs, getting invested in whether that's the Boys or Girls Club or working directly with a school, but giving opportunities for young people to see more of the world. The other piece to this is also getting politically involved. Does it look like community education, political education for people, right? How do I interact with public safety or cops a little bit differently? But also, every single day, the prison abolition means that I just need to continue to care deeply for those who are most ignored and most marginalized. So Am I creating safe spaces? Am I using inclusive language? Um, are these people who are currently incarcerated, do they have the support that they need? Does it look like a volunteering opportunity just to be able to give space and time to somebody else, right? I really do believe in service learning and really being able to ensure like a holistic society is here, because I think culture and policy continuously interact. And the more that we're able to humanize and be able to call out the fact that, yo, we need to be able to take care of each other. We need to make sure that we're getting into prisons, and we need to make sure reentry programs are actually suitable. More people are hiring formerly incarcerated people. More people are giving access to currently incarcerated people. That's the shit that's going to be important, because guess what, when those people and those largely amount of black and brown men are able to be back with their families and have adequate resources and time, we don't have to worry about recidivism. We don't have to worry around like mental health that may be unchecked, because now we are actually deeply caring for this set of people and this group of people, right? And it took me a while to think around this consistently, but I recognize like I can't continue to move in a world that is individualist in nature. I'm very much so more communal. Love, human decency, and community are all tenets of my politic, and we should all be moving with something of sorts, right? And so, if there's one thing you gathered from this episode, it's understanding here is the data around who's currently in prison, why prison abolition is a movement that can actually benefit the black community as a whole, and what does it look like in practice every single day, right? What does it look like for you? But also, if there's reading that needs to get done, Angela Davis is really great, a really great entry point for this. But also talk to people, go to the no name book clubs, right? Like they are consistently interrogating our own politic, it's interrogating policy, it's interrogating educational justice and the true benefits of building a community, the true benefits of prison abolition, and just getting that movement here. It is scary to think because abolition feels like an absolute, but right now it is like these everyday practices that get us to a safer society. It gets us to a more healthy community. It gets us to human decency again, community again, people again, right? And so I am deeply, deeply, deeply fully behind prison abolition. I continue to think around the ways in which I can do better and the ways in which that we can do better, and creating a space where the black community can really thrive differently. So I'm going to delve a little bit more into the conversation in more episodes, because I do think it's one that I'm going to continuously revisit, and different avenues on how to advocate and different avenues on how to get politically active. But I hope that this was a really good intro and crash course into what prison abolition is and how you can start. I'll make sure to list lots of, in my opinion, required reading or podcast listens that will help you understand why prison abolition is important and how I developed the politic and the people who have also influenced me. And there's also going to be some workshops or different organizations that you would be able to support, and other data points all within the description box below. I really, really hope that this episode felt educational. I hope that you took something from this. I am so excited to hear the conversation that comes along after that and after this. So this is your boy Keith. This is another episode of This American Negro. You already know what it is. Niggas and niggas only. Peace.